What is up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American Politics, back in with a new video, and today it is time that we grade my predictions for the gubernatorial races in 2022. That's right, folks. Unlike most people, I want to admit when I'm wrong, and I decided, okay, we're going to be looking at 8 states that the predictions weren't necessarily the most accurate in the world, all right? And we're going to see, were they a good prediction, were they a mediocre, or a bad prediction? Now, we're factoring into my final prediction, we're factoring into the final margin, and how much of the national environment affect this race. For example, my prediction was an R+5 generic ballot. It's closer to R+3. That 2-point shift would have gotten a lot of these states very close to that 3-point margin of error. So there's that. And we're going to factor into those results and all that good stuff, plus third-party vote share, which underperformed vastly this election. I'll show you what I mean. Now, before I continue, I hope you enjoy these type of videos. If you do, smash that like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the Twitter account in the description down below, and join the channel today. That is right, folks, for just 10 cents a day. You can join Real American Politics, only 10 cents a day. That's a phenomenal deal as it helps support the daily content. We all love that daily content, so I hope you join today. All right, folks, let's get into today's self-grading of the elections. Again, this is going to be me being as hard as I possibly can on myself, because I want to be honest. There are some of these states I got flat out wrong. But some of these people going around here saying, oh my God, you're so wrong, I'm going to explain my thought process in these 8 states. And you can make your final judgment, but there are 3 categories: good, mediocre, or bad. Good, the thought process was correct. The margin, correct. It was within the 3-point margin of error, plus the generic ballot. You could factor in it was 2 points more Democrat than expected. That's factored in. Everything was correct, right, and within the margin of error. Mediocre, the thought process was correct, just the margin of error was slightly larger than 3, all right? Bad, you'll see. These are states that way off the money with. So let's get into it. This is just a nice, simple video to show you guys where I had my faults this cycle and where to get better in the future. So let's start with the state of Oregon. And right here, Drazan lost by around 3.5 points. I projected she was going to win by under a point. My whole thought process was correct. It came down to what percent of the vote Betsy Johnson and the other independents got. If in total they got 12, 13, 14% of the vote, Drazan would have won this race. Johnson, she got 8.5%. And look at this. The margin, 12%. If she got 12%, Drazan more than likely would have won. She would have more than likely become the next governor of Oregon. And the margin of error, considering the fact that the national environment was around 2 points more Democrat than expected, I think this is not a bad prediction. I honestly give myself a good prediction for Oregon. The thought process was correct. Whoops. The margin, when you count for the D+2, or I should say the R+3 electorate instead of R+5, it was right on the money, right within the margin of error, and the thought process was correct. So I think it was a good prediction. It just came down to the third-party performance. That's why Republicans underperformed Oregon. I still think it was a decent thought process. Just wish the independent vote share was larger than it was. So Oregon, I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, you got to tilt R. Whoop-de-frickin' do. An R+5 electorate, it absolutely would have been a tilt R, if not maybe tilt D state. It just came down to Betsy Johnson's performance. She underperformed. That's what happened. Arizona. I have my opinions on this race. I have some severe opinions on the state of Arizona. All right, how they handle this garbage. But I'm going to say for now it was a bad prediction. I should have made this like an R+2 to R+1 prediction. R+4 to 5, in hindsight, even an R+5 electorate was stupid. Yes, the margin of error existed, but my thought process was completely off the mark in this race. Now, we gotta see what happens, because I have my opinions. But either way, Republicans, this should have been like a tilt R to lean Republican seat. It was a bad prediction in hindsight. I'm not gonna run away from it. So that's kind of the one L from the Southwest. Outside of that, New Mexico was spot on, Nevada, Colorado. I got those states freaking perfect. So there's that in Arizona. Kind of the only L in that part of the country. So there's that. Kansas. The state of Kansas. I predicted Schmidt would win by a half point. He lost by 2.5. That alone's within the margin of error of 3 points. Plus, people are forgetting that there was a third-party candidate on the ballot. And this was 2 points more Democrat than expected for the national generic ballot. If it was R+5, Schmidt would have came very close to winning. Absolutely. And I think with all the fundamentals, I mean, Chris Kobach won, but Schmidt lost? Who would have predicted that? So I think it's a good prediction. I mean, the fundamentals were correct. The idea that Schmidt, it was be close either way. It was fairly close. He more than likely would have won in R+5 electorate. Plus, it was within the margin of error. I think that's a reasonably good prediction. It just, the outcome wasn't what we exactly expected, but the thought process and the numbers were close to reality, unlike some of the other states. So Kansas, I think I did a close enough job where it's like, whoop-de-doo, I'm off by 2 to 3 points. I mean, most pollsters are off by 5 to 6. So I think that was a reasonable prediction at the time. So Kansas, I think, is a good prediction, especially with the fundamentals, the margin of error, and all that good stuff. Minnesota. Okay, we're getting to the part of the country that there's not a lot of defenses for. Now, Minnesota's the only one where I do have a valid defense. I'm making a mediocre prediction. The fundamentals were the Weed Party was going to get a significant amount of the vote, and that's what was going to make this race closer than expected. I predicted as lean Democrat, or I think it was like, Jensen loses by like 2 to 3. All right. So the margin of error was slightly like 4 to 5 points, slightly larger than the 3% I gave. When you account for all the other factors, the independent vote share was not what we expected. Most people thought these left-wing weed parties would have got 4 to 5% of the vote. Do some math. That would have significantly narrowed the margin, but it was still a mediocre prediction. The idea was good, the margin was a little bit bigger than we expected. Now we're getting to the part of the country that I feel the most pain with, Wisconsin. I'm not going to defend myself whatsoever. I have my opinions, but this was a bad prediction. I have nothing to say. Tim Michels, I love the guy. I still think he was a good candidate. I just think what happened with Wisconsin was a shame. I'm not saying, nothing election integrity or anything like that. I'm just saying Republicans in Wisconsin underperformed across the board. Michels was a great candidate, in my opinion. He was somebody that was going to stand up for values, but I just think the entire ticket underperformed too much that it kind of dragged Michels down much larger than we expected. Nobody thought that Michels was going to lose by almost 5. I mean, most polls, which overperformed Democrats or underperformed Republicans, I should say, in the past, they suddenly understate Democrats' support. It's like, that's a first. So, it's still a bad prediction. I still had a Michels plus 4 to 5. There's nothing to defend it. It was flat out a bad prediction overall. Michigan, there's even less to explain here. I'm not even defending it. There's no reason to do it. Pennsylvania. The thing with Pennsylvania is the only reason it's not considered a good prediction is because the margin was way bigger than we expected. And it is overall a bad prediction. The idea wasn't wrong. It's just Mastriano got crushed by so much, there's no defending it. I mean, no serious person is going to defend a 15-point, or actually, I think it was like a 10-point miss. If it was a 5-point miss, I can make some defense over it. But a 10-point miss, that's pushing it. And I still had Mastriano losing, just I thought it would be closer than expected. There's a lot of voters that weren't being polled. Well, it turns out Shapiro did do a lot better in the western half of the state than anybody thought. So Pennsylvania, it was a bad prediction. And the final one is the state of Maine. The great state of Maine, there's no defending it. Look, this is my reverse Susan Collins. I thought this race would be a nail-biter. It was going to be one of those that come down to how much of the vote came from Portland. Well, it didn't really matter. LePage got crushed. Absolutely destroyed in this race by 13 points. There's no defending it. Absolutely no defense to what happened in Maine. And this, folks, is my self-report card for the 2022 gubernatorial predictions. There were there's for sure 4 states you can make the argument were bad. The 5th one I'm including is Arizona, but whatever. Mediocre, I think Minnesota. The right thought process just didn't go through well. As for the other competitive states, we did pretty solid in Oregon, Nevada, New Mexico, Kansas, right? Correct thought process. The margin of error was as good as we expected. And for the competitive seats, it was not that bad of a night. Half of them, they were off the money. The other half, they were basically spot on. We got to get the other 50%. That's what I'm trying to say here. And I'm hoping with my new methodology for how we're doing predictions in the future, it's going to make it a lot better. Because obviously, predicting margins-wise, that's a lot harder than even I originally expected it to be. I mean, a lot of these races, if I went with my new methodology, I think a lot of this would have been like 2 misses. We just got to see what happens. But overall, folks, this is the final self-grading of the 2022 election. Look, I'm somebody that wants to admit when I'm wrong, because I was wrong in a lot of places this election. But these people that said, oh, Trump was going to get only like 100 electoral votes in 2020, they have no right to say that, your prediction was so bad. A lot of these states, it came down to Democrats just overperformed the generic ballot. That's what it came down to. If you accounted for that, a lot of these states would have been green or yellow. But we just got to see. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching my scorecards. I know a lot of people are saying everybody got wrong. I'm still just want to admit, yeah, this was a prediction that was not that good, and I'm admitting it. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video. Godspeed to all of you.